Raheem sat quietly on the bench outside the hospital. The morning sun had begun to shine softly, but its warmth could not reach the heaviness in his heart. Inside the room, his son Sammy lay on the bed. Sammy's small hands rested gently on the white blanket. He looked calm, but Raheem knew that calmness was mixed with sadness. The accident had changed everything. One wrong turn, one slip, and Sammy's life was never going to be the same again. The doctors had told him that his son might never walk again. Raheem could still remember the day of the accident. He had driven fast to reach the market, and a sudden rain had made the road slippery. Sammy had been riding his bicycle when a car lost control and hit him. The paramedics arrived quickly, and Raheem remembered holding his son's hand as they rushed him to the hospital. The days that followed were filled with pain, worry, and long nights. Raheem had cried silently while sitting in the waiting room. He had held Sammy's favorite toys and tried to comfort him, but the boy's bright smile had faded. Raheem often watched Sammy's eyes, searching for hope and seeing only sadness. He wanted to do something, anything, to bring joy back into his son's life. One afternoon, while Raheem was scrolling through his phone, he saw an advertisement that caught his attention. It was about a German Shepherd K9, trained to assist people with disabilities. The dog was described as intelligent, gentle, and very loyal. Raheem read about many children and adults whose lives had changed because of these dogs. They could help people move safely, carry small items, and provide emotional support. Raheem felt a spark of hope in his heart. Maybe this dog could bring happiness back to Sammy. Maybe he could be a friend and a helper at the same time. The next day, Raheem drove to the kennel where the German Shepherd lived. The sun was bright and the air was fresh. As he entered, he saw several dogs playing in a large open area. One dog, a strong and alert German Shepherd, sat calmly near the gate. His coat was shiny and his eyes were deep and expressive. As soon as Raheem approached, the dog wagged his tail slowly and pressed his head gently against Raheem's hand. It was as if the dog knew why Raheem had come. "This is Bruno," said the caretaker. "He is trained to assist people with disabilities. He is calm, intelligent, and very loyal." Raheem nodded. He could see that Bruno was different. There was something in his eyes, something that told Raheem that this dog could understand and care. Raheem returned home that evening with Bruno sitting quietly in the car. Sammy was in his wheelchair, looking out of the window. When Raheem entered the room, he lifted Sammy into his arms and brought him to the living room. Sammy looked surprised when he saw Bruno. The dog walked slowly toward him, sniffing the wheelchair and then gently placing his head near Sammy's hand. Sammy's eyes widened. "He is beautiful," he whispered. Raheem smiled. It was the first word Sammy had spoken with excitement in a long time. Bruno seemed to understand his role immediately. He sat beside Sammy, watching him closely. When Sammy moved his hands or shifted slightly, Bruno moved closer, offering support. Raheem felt a wave of relief. Perhaps this was the beginning of something wonderful. The days that followed were filled with small discoveries. Bruno helped Sammy in ways that amazed Raheem. He could push the wheelchair slightly when Sammy's hands were tired. He could pick up small items that fell on the floor. He never barked loudly or jumped aggressively. Instead, he was calm, careful, and always attentive. Sammy began to smile more often. He spoke to Bruno, telling him stories about school, about friends, and about his dreams. Bruno listened patiently, as if he understood every word. Raheem watched his son slowly come back to life. He saw Sammy's laughter returning, first quietly and then more openly. Sammy began to have small routines with Bruno. Every morning they would go to the garden. Sammy would sit in his wheelchair while Bruno ran around, bringing sticks and balls for Sammy to throw. Even though Sammy could not run, he could still play in his way. He could still laugh, still feel joy, and still feel the world around him. One evening, Raheem decided to try something new. He placed a small ramp in the living room and encouraged Sammy to try moving slightly up the ramp with Bruno's help. Sammy was hesitant at first, but Bruno stood behind him, his strong body steady and supportive. Slowly, carefully, Sammy moved up a few steps. Raheem felt tears in his eyes. It was the first time he had seen his son move in a way that seemed close to walking. Sammy looked at Bruno and whispered, "Thank you." Bruno wagged his tail as if to say, "You can do more." The bond between the boy and the dog grew stronger each day. Bruno was not just a helper. He became Sammy's best friend. Sammy began to share his secrets, his fears, and his dreams with Bruno. At night, Bruno would sit beside Sammy's bed, watching over him while he slept. Raheem could sleep more peacefully knowing that his son had a loyal companion who would never leave him alone. Raheem also noticed something else. Sammy's confidence began to grow. He started trying small things on his own. He would reach for objects, try to move his wheelchair independently, and even help feed Bruno. The father felt proud and hopeful. The accident had taken so much from their lives, but Bruno had brought a new light. The home was no longer silent and heavy. It was filled with laughter, small victories, and the quiet bond between a boy and his dog. One afternoon, Raheem took Sammy and Bruno to the park. The sun was warm and birds sang in the trees. Sammy looked around and smiled. He rolled his wheelchair slowly while Bruno walked beside him, matching his pace. Children in the park watched in awe. They saw a boy and his dog, not ordinary, but something special. Sammy waved at them and they waved back. The world felt bigger and friendlier. Raheem knew that Bruno's presence was more than just helpful. Bruno gave hope, courage, and friendship. Sammy's eyes shone with a light that Raheem had thought was lost forever. Every small action Bruno made, from nudging Sammy to picking up a toy, felt miraculous. Raheem felt a deep gratitude that he had made the decision to bring Bruno into their lives. That night, as Raheem tucked Sammy into bed, he looked at Bruno lying quietly beside the boy. "Thank you, Bruno," he whispered. Bruno looked at him with his deep, understanding eyes, and Raheem felt that somehow the dog understood the words without them being spoken. Sammy reached over and patted Bruno gently. "You are my hero," he said. Bruno wagged his tail as if to promise that he would always stay by his side. Raheem knew that the journey was only beginning. There would be challenges ahead, but with Bruno by Sammy's side, the boy had found a friend, a helper, and a source of courage. Raheem smiled softly, feeling hope fill his heart for the first time in many months. The bond between a father, a son, and a dog had started to change their lives. It was a quiet, gentle miracle, one that would grow stronger with each passing day. Raheem knew that with patience, love, and the unwavering loyalty of Bruno, Sammy could face the world again, and maybe one day walk in it too. The next morning, the sun rose gently over the city, filling the Raheem household with warmth. Sammy was already awake, his eyes bright with anticipation. He could hear Bruno moving quietly around the room, stretching and wagging his tail. Sammy smiled and reached for his friend. Bruno came immediately, nuzzling his head into Sammy's lap as if saying good morning. The boy laughed softly. The sound felt so rare and precious that Raheem paused in the doorway to listen. "Good morning, Bruno," Sammy said. His voice was calm but filled with joy. Bruno responded by gently licking Sammy's hand. It had become a daily ritual. Every morning they shared this small but powerful greeting. It was a bond that no words could fully describe. Raheem came into the room carrying a tray with breakfast. He smiled at the sight of his son and the dog together. "I think you two are the best team in the world," he said. Sammy laughed lightly, and Bruno wagged his tail as if he understood every word. After breakfast, Raheem suggested a new activity. He had read about small exercises that could help improve muscle strength for people with paralysis. Today he wanted to try them with Sammy and Bruno. Sammy looked at his father nervously. He was unsure if he could do it, but Bruno's presence gave him courage. Raheem placed a small ball in front of Sammy and asked him to reach for it. Sammy struggled slightly, but Bruno gently nudged the ball toward him with his nose. Sammy's face lit up as he grabbed it. "Bruno, you helped me," he said excitedly. Bruno barked softly in response, wagging his tail. For the next hour, they continued practicing simple movements. Sammy tried to reach higher, and Bruno assisted in small ways. Sometimes he placed his paw gently on Sammy's lap to help him balance. Sometimes he picked up objects that fell and brought them back. Every movement, every small success felt like a victory. Raheem watched in awe. He had never imagined that a dog could be such a source of encouragement and support. Later in the afternoon, Raheem suggested going for a walk in the park. Sammy had not been outside much since the accident. The wheelchair had made it difficult, and Raheem had feared that Sammy might feel embarrassed. But today, with Bruno by his side, Sammy felt brave. As they entered the park, children were playing and laughing. Some of them stopped to watch Sammy and Bruno. They saw a boy moving in his wheelchair with a strong and loyal dog walking beside him. Bruno stayed close, occasionally looking up at Sammy as if checking that he was safe. Sammy's heart felt lighter than it had in months. He started to move the wheelchair slowly along the path. Bruno matched his pace exactly. The dog stayed alert, ready to assist if needed. People in the park began to notice. A mother pointed to her child, whispering, "Look at that dog. He is helping the boy move." Sammy saw the curiosity in their eyes, but he no longer felt shy. He felt proud of Bruno, proud of himself, and proud of the bond they shared. He waved at the children, and some waved back. He realized that his world could still be full of friends and laughter. Rahim walked behind them, his heart swelling with hope. Seeing his son smile and interact with the world again was a blessing he had not expected so soon. Bruno's presence had changed more than just Sammy's daily routine. It had brought back courage, confidence, and a sense of normalcy. After the walk, they found a quiet spot under a large tree. Rahim sat on a bench while Sammy and Bruno rested on the grass. Sammy gently stroked Bruno's back, feeling the strong muscles beneath the fur. "I like you, Bruno. I feel like I can do anything when you are here," he said. Bruno responded with a soft bark as if agreeing. Rahim smiled. "He is more than just a dog, Sammy. He is your partner, your friend, and your helper. Together you two can do wonderful things." Sammy nodded. He felt the truth in his father's words. Bruno had already become an important part of his life. The following days brought more discoveries. Rahim noticed that Sammy was trying to move slightly more in his wheelchair. Bruno was always there, steady and supportive. The dog seemed to understand exactly when Sammy needed help and when he needed encouragement. Sometimes Rahim would leave the room for a few minutes, and Bruno would stay by Sammy's side, guiding him gently and watching over him. One evening, Rahim suggested they try a new exercise at home. He had placed a small ramp near the living room. Sammy hesitated at first. He looked at the ramp and then at Bruno. The dog seemed to sense Sammy's fear. He moved closer and nudged Sammy's hand gently. "You can do it," his eyes seemed to say. With Bruno's support, Sammy began moving up the ramp slowly. At first, it was difficult. His hands shook slightly and he felt unsure. But Bruno stayed calm and steady behind him, providing support. Step by step, Sammy moved forward, encouraged by the dog's presence. Rahim held his breath, watching as Sammy made progress. Finally, Sammy reached the top of the ramp. He turned and smiled at Bruno, tears in his eyes. "I did it, Bruno. I did it!" he exclaimed. Bruno barked softly and wagged his tail, proud of Sammy's achievement. Rahim felt a deep sense of joy. He realized that this small moment was significant. Sammy was gaining not just physical strength but also confidence and determination. The bond between Sammy and Bruno grew stronger each day. They shared meals together, played together, and rested together. Bruno became more than a helper. He became a companion, a source of comfort and a symbol of hope. Sammy began talking about dreams he had not thought about for months. He spoke about going back to school, playing with friends, and learning new things. Bruno was always there, silently supporting his every word and action. One night, Rahim sat beside Sammy's bed, watching the two of them. Sammy was gently patting Bruno, who was lying calmly by his side. "I think Bruno is my best friend," Sammy whispered. Rahim smiled, feeling the weight of months of worry lifting from his heart. "Not just your best friend, Sammy. He is part of our family now," Rahim said. Sammy nodded, holding Bruno close. The boy felt safe, loved, and understood. He realized that even though his legs could not carry him like before, he could still experience life fully with Bruno by his side. Bruno's presence also began to attract attention from neighbors and friends. People admired the way the dog helped Sammy move and the gentle bond they shared. Some even asked Rahim how they could get a trained dog like Bruno for their loved ones. Rahim felt proud, not only for his son's progress but also for the example of hope they were showing to others. Each day brought new challenges, but also new victories. Sammy tried simple tasks like reaching for objects, feeding Bruno, or moving short distances independently. Bruno's guidance and support made each small achievement possible. Rahim realized that the accident had taken much, but it had also brought a new beginning, a chance for Sammy to rediscover life in a meaningful way. One afternoon, Rahim and Sammy were sitting in the garden, enjoying the soft breeze. Bruno ran around playfully, bringing a stick to Sammy's hands. Sammy laughed freely, a sound that had been missing for many months. Rahim watched, feeling a quiet miracle unfolding before his eyes. Bruno had not only given physical support but had also brought back the joy and innocence that Sammy needed most. Rahim knew that the journey ahead would not be easy. Sammy still faced challenges and there would be days of frustration and struggle. But with Bruno by his side, every day held promise and hope. The boy had discovered a friend who never judged, never tired, and always cared. The father had found a way to restore happiness in his son's life through love, patience, and the loyalty of a remarkable dog. As the sun set, Rahim looked at Sammy and Bruno. The golden light made Bruno's coat shine, and Sammy's eyes sparkled with excitement. He realized that together, they had started a journey of courage, friendship, and miracles. Rahim smiled softly, knowing that the best was yet to come. The bond between a boy and his dog had already begun to transform their lives, and there was no limit to the hope, joy, and love they could share. The next morning, sunlight poured gently through the window. Sammy was awake before Rahim, eager to start the day. He reached out and patted Bruno, who was lying faithfully by his side. The dog responded immediately, standing up and wagging his tail as if ready for the day's adventures. Sammy smiled, feeling stronger and more confident than ever before. Rahim entered the room carrying a tray of breakfast. "Good morning, Sammy," he said. "Bruno is already waiting for you. Are you ready for today?" Sammy nodded eagerly. Bruno barked softly, his eyes focused on Sammy. It was a small sound, but it carried a sense of excitement. Rahim knew that Bruno's presence had brought not just support, but hope, courage, and joy into their lives. After breakfast, Rahim suggested they try a new exercise. He had read about gentle stretching and strengthening routines that could help Sammy's upper body. Today, the goal was to improve Sammy's balance and coordination. Sammy was nervous but determined. He knew that Bruno would be there to support him every step of the way. Rahim placed a small cushion in front of Sammy and asked him to lift small objects from the floor onto the cushion. Sammy reached, hesitated, and then tried again. Bruno nudged the objects gently toward him when they slipped. Each time Sammy succeeded, his face lit up with pride. Rahim could see the transformation in his son. Confidence was returning, and with it a renewed sense of independence. After the exercises, Rahim suggested a walk outside. The park had become a familiar place, a space where Sammy could move freely with Bruno by his side. Today, however, Rahim had noticed something unusual. A new path had been opened near the pond, slightly sloped and longer than the usual path. He was unsure if Sammy could manage it, but he wanted to encourage his son to try. Sammy looked at the slope nervously. "It looks high, father," he said. Rahim nodded. "It is a little more challenging, but Bruno will help you. You are stronger than you think." Sammy hesitated, glancing at Bruno. The dog wagged his tail and stepped closer, standing by the wheelchair as if to say, "We can do this together." With Rahim's encouragement and Bruno's guidance, Sammy began moving along the path. The slope was steeper than usual, and the effort required more strength. Sammy's hands trembled slightly on the wheelchair handles, but Bruno stayed close, steady and alert. Step by step, Sammy advanced. The dog occasionally nudged the wheelchair gently, offering just the right amount of support. Children playing nearby stopped to watch. They saw a boy moving carefully, a dog walking faithfully beside him, and a father following closely behind. The sight was remarkable. Sammy felt proud of himself, and Bruno's steady presence gave him courage. By the time they reached the top of the slope, Sammy was breathing heavily but smiling widely. "You did it, Sammy," Rahim said, his voice full of pride. Sammy patted Bruno. "We did it together, Bruno. You helped me," he said. Bruno barked softly, wagging his tail. Rahim watched them, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. He realized that the small victories were as miraculous as any large achievement. The bond between the boy and the dog had created something extraordinary. The following days brought more progress. Sammy began trying new tasks at home. He practiced reaching for objects from different angles, moving small items and learning to use his arms more efficiently. Bruno remained by his side at all times. If Sammy struggled, Bruno would assist gently. If Sammy succeeded, Bruno would show excitement in small, encouraging ways. Rahim noticed that Sammy's confidence was growing faster than he had ever imagined. One afternoon, Rahim suggested a new challenge. He had read about gentle balance exercises that could help Sammy strengthen his core. He placed a small platform in the living room and asked Sammy to lean slightly forward, while Bruno supported him from behind. Sammy looked unsure. The platform seemed intimidating, but Bruno's calm presence reassured him. With careful guidance, Sammy began the exercise. Bruno positioned himself behind Sammy, pressing gently to provide balance. Sammy leaned forward slowly, feeling the support of the dog. At first he wobbled slightly, but Bruno remained steady. With each attempt, Sammy grew more confident. By the end of the exercise, he was smiling broadly. "I am getting stronger, Father," he said. Rahim nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and relief. Rahim realized that Bruno was more than a helper. He was a teacher, a motivator, and a friend. The dog seemed to understand every small need, every hesitation, and every effort. Sammy's progress was not only physical but emotional. The boy felt capable, valued, and loved. One evening, as the sun began to set, Rahim noticed Sammy staring at the window. "What are you thinking about, Sammy?" he asked. Sammy's eyes were focused on the park outside. "I want to try moving without the wheelchair for a short distance," he said quietly. Rahim felt a mixture of worry and hope. Sammy had not tried this since the accident. "Are you sure, Sammy?" Rahim asked gently. Sammy nodded. "I know Bruno will help me," he said. Rahim smiled. He knew that the dog had become more than a companion. He was now an essential part of Sammy's courage. They went to the living room, where the floor was smooth and safe. Bruno positioned himself in front of Sammy, ready to guide him. Rahim stayed behind, prepared to support if needed. Sammy took a deep breath, held Bruno's harness, and tried to stand with Bruno's assistance. At first, he could only lift slightly, but he persisted. Bruno stayed calm and steady, providing balance and confidence. Slowly, carefully, Sammy managed to take a few steps with Bruno's help. The boy's face lit up with excitement. "I am walking, Father. I am walking," he exclaimed. Rahim's eyes filled with tears. The moment was more than miraculous. It was a triumph of courage, love, and determination. Bruno barked softly, wagging his tail as if celebrating the victory. Sammy laughed, feeling a sense of freedom he had not experienced in months. The news of Sammy's progress spread quietly among neighbors and friends. They came to see the boy and his dog, amazed at the bond they shared. People admired Bruno's intelligence and loyalty, and they were inspired by Sammy's courage. The father felt proud but also grateful. He realized that the dog had not only helped his son physically, but had also restored hope, joy, and confidence in their lives. Rahim knew that the journey was far from over. Sammy still had challenges ahead, and there would be difficult days. But with Bruno by his side, every step forward felt possible. The bond between them was now unbreakable. Sammy had discovered a friend who would never leave, never judge, and always support him. One afternoon, they returned to the park to practice walking with Bruno's guidance. The sun was warm and the air was filled with birdsong. Sammy held Bruno's harness firmly, taking slow steps. Bruno moved carefully, adjusting his pace to match Sammy's. Rahim followed closely, ready to encourage but not interfere. People passing by stopped and watched in amazement. They could see a boy defying the limits that had been placed on him, guided by the loyalty and strength of a dog. As the day ended, Rahim sat on a bench while Sammy and Bruno played nearby. Sammy had learned to enjoy the simple pleasures again. He threw a small ball which Bruno fetched and returned patiently. Rahim observed the boys' laughter and realized that the accident had taken much, but it had also given them a gift. The bond with Bruno had opened doors to courage, independence, and happiness. That night, as Sammy went to bed, he hugged Bruno tightly. "Thank you for helping me, Bruno. You are my hero," he whispered. Bruno rested his head on Sammy's lap, understanding the words without needing to speak. Rahim watched them and felt a sense of peace he had not known in months. The boy was no longer trapped in despair. He had a friend who could guide him, a companion who loved him unconditionally, and a father who believed in him. Rahim knew that the next steps would require patience, determination, and continued support. But he also knew that with Bruno's presence, Sammy could face anything. The bond they shared had already worked small miracles, and there was no limit to what they could achieve together. Every day brought new discoveries, new victories, and new reasons to hope. The journey had only begun, but Rahim could see that the combination of courage, love, and loyalty was powerful. Sammy's spirit was rising, strengthened by the guidance of his remarkable dog. Bruno had become more than an animal. He was a symbol of hope, a helper in every sense, and a miracle in the boy's life. As the night grew darker, Rahim whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. The father, the son, and the dog had found a path forward one step at a time. The miraculous moments were just beginning, and Rahim knew that the future would hold even greater triumphs, all because of the unbreakable bond between a boy and his German Shepherd K9. The sun had just risen, casting a soft golden light across the Rahim household. Sami was already awake, sitting in his wheelchair by the window, watching the birds hop across the garden. His eyes sparkled with anticipation. Today he felt ready to try something new, something that had seemed impossible only a few weeks ago. Bruno, ever attentive, stood quietly beside him, tail wagging slowly, waiting for Sami's signal. Rahim entered the room with a warm smile. "Good morning, Sami. Are you ready for today's practice?" he asked. Sami nodded eagerly. He had been preparing himself mentally and physically for this moment. The exercises with Bruno had given him confidence, but today, Rahim had a different plan. He wanted to encourage Sami to attempt standing without the wheelchair for a short distance, with Bruno guiding him. Sami's heart raced. He glanced at Bruno. The dog's steady eyes and calm presence gave him courage. Bruno nudged Sami gently with his nose as if saying, "You can do this. I am with you." Sami took a deep breath and held onto Bruno's harness tightly. Rahim moved behind him, ready to support if necessary, but he wanted Sami to rely on Bruno's guidance and his own strength. Slowly, carefully, Sami attempted to lift himself from the wheelchair. His legs trembled, but Bruno pressed lightly against his back, offering balance and reassurance. The first attempt lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to fill Sami with hope. "I can do this, father," he whispered. Rahim smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "Yes, Sami, you can," he said. They repeated the attempt several times. Each time, Sami gained a little more strength and confidence. Bruno remained patient and supportive, never rushing, never leaving Sami's side. The bond between them had grown into something extraordinary. Sami could feel the dog's loyalty and intelligence guiding him, step by step. Rahim decided it was time to take the next step. He led Sami and Bruno to the garden, where the grass was soft and the space wide. "Try walking a few steps with Bruno leading," Rahim encouraged. Sami's eyes widened, but he nodded. He gripped Bruno's harness firmly, feeling the warmth and strength of his companion. Bruno stepped forward, leading the way while watching Sami carefully. Sami lifted his legs one at a time and took his first tentative steps. The grass beneath his feet felt strange, but he pushed forward. Bruno stayed close, adjusting his position to maintain balance. Rahim followed behind silently, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. This was a delicate moment, but Rahim trusted Bruno's guidance. Step by step, Sami moved further than he had ever imagined possible. The boys' laughter filled the garden, a sound Rahim had not heard in months. Bruno barked softly in encouragement, wagging his tail. Sami could hardly believe it. He was walking, guided by his loyal friend, and it felt miraculous. After a few minutes, Sami stopped, breathing heavily but smiling broadly. "Bruno, we did it!" "I am walking," he exclaimed. Bruno nudged him with his nose as if to celebrate the achievement. Rahim's eyes filled with tears. This moment was more than physical progress. It was a breakthrough of courage, trust, and hope. The next days were filled with practice and small victories. Sami tried walking longer distances in the garden, with Bruno by his side. The dog adjusted to every movement, offering support whenever needed. Rahim noticed that Sami's confidence was growing rapidly. He was no longer afraid to attempt new challenges. Bruno's presence had transformed fear into determination. One afternoon, Rahim suggested a new activity. He set up a short course in the backyard, with small obstacles and turns to test Sami's balance and coordination. Sami felt nervous but excited. Bruno positioned himself in front, ready to guide. Rahim followed closely. Sami took a deep breath and began moving along the course. Each step required focus, balance, and trust. Bruno guided him carefully, adjusting his pace and position to match Sami's movements. Children from the neighborhood came to watch. They had heard about Sami's progress and were amazed to see him walking with the help of a dog. Some of them clapped softly, encouraging him. Sami felt proud and motivated. With Bruno's guidance, he completed the course without falling. Rahim's heart swelled with joy. This was a true miracle, the result of love, patience, and determination. After completing the course, Sami sat on the grass, hugging Bruno tightly. "Thank you, Bruno. You helped me do something I never thought I could," he said. Bruno rested his head on Sami's lap, understanding the words without needing them spoken. Rahim knelt beside them, tears of happiness streaming down his face. The boy and his dog had achieved something extraordinary together. Rahim realized that Bruno was more than a companion. He was a teacher, a motivator, and a source of courage. Sammy had learned that with trust, support, and determination, he could face challenges that had once seemed impossible. The bond between the boy and the dog had created a miracle in their lives. That evening, Rahim suggested a quiet activity. They moved to the living room where Sammy could practice walking in a safe, enclosed space. Bruno positioned himself in front and Sammy held the harness tightly. Rahim watched silently, feeling awe at the boy's courage. Step by step, Sammy moved forward, guided by Bruno. Every small movement filled him with pride and joy. After some practice, Rahim decided to reward both Sammy and Bruno. He brought out a small ball and encouraged Sammy to throw it while standing with Bruno's support. Sammy laughed as Bruno fetched the ball and returned it carefully. The joy on Sammy's face was infectious. Rahim felt a deep sense of gratitude for the dog that had brought so much happiness and hope back into their lives. The next morning, Rahim suggested another challenge. He had read about gentle exercises that could help Sammy strengthen his legs further. With Bruno guiding and supporting, Sammy began to lift his legs while standing, taking small steps forward. The progress was slow but steady. Each movement was a victory. Each step brought more confidence. Neighbors and friends began noticing the changes. They were amazed at the boy who was walking with the help of a dog. Many came to watch, inspired by the courage and determination displayed by Sammy and the loyalty of Bruno. Rahim felt proud, but also humble. He knew that the real miracle was the bond between his son and the dog, a connection built on love, trust, and perseverance. One afternoon, Rahim suggested taking a walk outside the neighborhood. The streets were quiet and the pavement was smooth. Sammy was nervous but eager. He held Bruno's harness tightly, feeling the dog's strength and steadiness. Bruno guided him carefully, step by step. Rahim followed closely, ready to assist if needed. People passing by stopped to watch in amazement. They saw a boy walking with determination, guided by a loyal dog. Some clapped softly, while others whispered words of encouragement. Sammy smiled, feeling proud and strong. He realized that the world could still be full of possibilities even after the accident. After the walk, Rahim, Sammy, and Bruno returned home, exhausted but happy. Sammy hugged Bruno tightly, whispering, "You made me brave, Bruno. You helped me walk again." Bruno rested his head on Sammy's shoulder, understanding the gratitude without words. Rahim watched silently, knowing that this was one of the most miraculous moments in their lives. That night, Rahim reflected on the journey they had taken together. Sammy's accident had brought despair and fear, but it had also opened the door to a miracle. The bond between a father, a son, and a German Shepherd K9 had transformed their lives. Bruno had not only assisted physically, but had also given emotional strength, courage, and hope. Rahim knew that the path ahead would still have challenges. Sammy would need continued practice and support. But with Bruno by his side, every step felt possible. The miraculous progress they had witnessed was only the beginning. With patience, love, and determination, they could face anything together. Sammy hugged Bruno once more, feeling warmth, trust, and joy. The boy had discovered the power of friendship, loyalty, and courage. The father had found a way to restore hope in his son's life. And Bruno, the faithful dog, had become a symbol of miracles, proving that love and loyalty could create extraordinary moments in everyday life. The morning sun shone brightly over the Rahim household. Sammy woke up with a sense of excitement and determination. Today he had a plan. He wanted to try walking a longer distance than he had ever attempted before, guided by Bruno. The German Shepherd stood faithfully by his side, sensing the boy's eagerness. His tail wagged gently, his eyes full of focus and loyalty. Rahim entered the room with a warm smile. "Good morning, Sammy. Are you ready for something special today?" he asked. Sammy nodded eagerly. He had been practicing diligently with Bruno for weeks, and he felt stronger and braver than ever. Rahim had been carefully observing his progress and knew that today could be a milestone in Sammy's journey. They began in the living room. Sammy gripped Bruno's harness firmly, feeling the dog's steady presence. Rahim stayed behind, ready to offer support if needed, but trusting Bruno's guidance. With careful steps, Sammy lifted his legs and began moving forward. Bruno guided him patiently, adjusting to every movement, every hesitation, and every breath. Step by step, Sammy moved across the room. The sunlight falling through the windows created patterns on the floor, almost as if celebrating his progress. Rahim watched silently, feeling a mixture of pride, relief, and awe. Sammy's steps,